Thomas Hobbes was born in Wiltshire, England in 1588. His childhood remains largely shrouded in mystery, and even the name of his mother is unknown. His father, however, Thomas Sr., was extremely poor and very uneducated, eventually abandoning Thomas and forcing him to live with his uncle. Despite this, Hobbes grew up to be a gifted and ambitious student, attending university at Magdalene Hall, or what is now known as the University of Oxford. However, he would follow his own sort of curriculum because he didn't enjoy scholastic learning. After graduating, he took part in a grand tour of Europe from 1610 to 1615. During this time, he studied many Greek and Latin authors, while also translating Greek manuscripts to English. After this trip, he went back to England and then moved to Paris. During his time in Paris, Hobbes developed some of his most crucial ideas that would later affect much of his philosophical doctrine. He returned to England only to find it in the midst of a civil war. In response to the war, Hobbes began writing his most influential political treatise, Leviathan. Hobbes had been writing and publishing books for a while, but Leviathan was his first influential hit and served as the best example for many of his now famous ideas. However, that isn't to say Hobbes didn't have his critics. Leviathan, as well as some of his other works of the time, were extremely controversial and led to Hobbes being banned in England from publishing anything related to human conduct. He wrote an autobiography and continued to translate Latin verses until his death in 1679, his last words being, quote, "a great leap in the dark." When Hobbes first started forming his philosophical ideas, he had to take into account a few important questions. What is the true nature of man? How can human beings live together? What form of government, if any, would provide humans with safety and opportunities of growth? How is political authority justified, and how far does it extend? In response to these questions, Hobbes came up with three main ideas that made up much of his political and philosophical teachings. Number 1. He believed in human nature. In their natural state, humans have no innate restrictions put on their liberty, meaning that everyone has the right to everything all the time. The lives of individuals in this state of nature were, quote, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Hobbes argues humans are exclusively self-interested and are bound to fight and quarrel with one another. The three principal causes of quarrel, according to Hobbes, are competition, diffidence, also known as safety, and finally, glory. Number 2. A social contract is needed to form a society to keep people out of this natural state. To do this, individuals have to mutually give up some of their natural rights in exchange for limited rights, which leads to a safer society overall. Number 3. The only way to guarantee peace within a society is to have an absolute monarchy. In this form of government, there is one central monarch that holds supreme authority and isn't restricted by written laws or legislature. Without one central power, society will be overtaken by conflict and disagreement, which Hobbes argues will lead to civil war, and in turn the destruction of that society. Instead, Hobbes advocates that all members in society should submit to one absolute central authority in order to maintain peace. Although many of Hobbes' ideas were widely disputed, that doesn't change the fact that he was incredibly influential in both the political and philosophical world. Hobbes laid much of the groundwork for the social contract theory, which philosophers like John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and Immanuel Kant would later build upon using their own ideas. Countries all around the world, including America, have at least some of their political roots embedded in Thomas Hobbes' beliefs. This means that without Hobbes' contributions in political philosophy, the societies we live in today may look very different, or worse yet, may not exist at all.